Good afternoon, all, and welcome. My name is Soto, and I am the Director of Grant Making for Greater Twin Cities United Way. And I am thrilled to be here this afternoon to share with you this funding opportunity. Thank you so much for attending this information session to learn more about the Greater Twin Cities United Way Community Investments Funding Opportunity and application process. Our goal for the afternoon is for you all to leave clear on the information that is required in order to apply for this funding opportunity, the priorities that will drive the funding decisions, and the process for applying. We will round out the time with an opportunity for you to have a conversation with the United Way staff person and be able to answer questions. The agenda that you see here will guide the time. We're going to start with an overview of how this community investments funding opportunity fits into our larger mission at United Way. We will then hear from one of our advisory group members, which was a group that was comprised of community members who guided this RFP's design. Then we will have a team member walk through an overview of the application and also give a tutorial on using our online application system. And then finally, as I mentioned, we'll round out with Q&A. We will start with a whole group Q&A opportunity, and then we will have small breakout groups specific to each eligible impact area that you can opt in to join. So as you have questions, certainly feel free to ask those in the chat box. We will respond to questions at the end during that Q&A time. We would like to take a moment to acknowledge that these are traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of Indigenous peoples. We are on Dakota land in Minnesota, Makote, land where water reflects the sky or cloudy water. The water, trees, and all living things come out of the ground, carrying with them the spirit of the Dakota people, because quite literally, this ground is saturated with the DNA of ancestors who lived here for a millennial. The land was ceded from the Dakota in the treaties of 1837 and 1857, and we acknowledge the complex and multi-layered history that includes violence and trauma. This land continues to hold great historical and spiritual significance and remains sacred for many people. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm tribal sovereignty, and the Greater Twin Cities United Way is committed to ongoing efforts to recognize, support, and advocate for sovereign tribal nations and Indigenous peoples of the state of Minnesota and across the US. Thank you. It is with that I will turn the floor over to our Senior Vice President of Community Impact, Acooa Ellis. Thank you all.
Thanks, Anne, and thank you all for joining. I'm scrolling through the names of participants on here and see some old friends and familiar faces and names. So excited to have you all join us. As Anne mentioned, my name is Acooa Ellis, for those I haven't had the pleasure of meeting before, and I have the honor of leading the Community Impact Department for the Greater Twin Cities United Way. For the next couple of minutes, I'll share with you all a bit of background about Greater Twin Cities United Way's approach to community impact before I then turn it over to Dr. Hawkins. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. So we start the majority of our external facing presentations, particularly related to community impact, with our theory of philanthropy, because this really serves as the North Star for all of our work, the investment that we make in time, talent, and treasure that are interested in with the Greater Twin Cities United Way show up relative to this theory of philanthropy. And so in short, our vision is to disrupt inequity and the extent to which income rates or place are strong predictors of an individual's ability to thrive. And we do that in a number of ways, but really at a high level, that is through investing in proven practices, promising strategies, and then strengthening the connective tissue among community partners and institutions. At Greater Twin Cities United Way, as many of you already know, we sit at the nexus of a number of different perspectives and stakeholder groups, and take that responsibility very seriously in terms of serving as a bridge to individuals in our community. Most often, folks know about the work that we do in our multi-year grant-making space, which is the focus for today's session. But we also want to position ourselves. It's important to position ourselves as learners. And in that, we really are paying close attention to promising strategies or things that may emerge in your own work or with other partners that we can incorporate, amplify, and share with the broader community, as well as understand that, it's easy to kind of be head down, focused on the work in front of you. And so it's important to us to also use our platform to draw connections across impact areas, across organizations, across sectors. And so want you all to know that as we invest all of our time, talent, and treasure, it is in service to this theory of philanthropy. Next slide. And so what is represented on the slide before you is how we see all of our community impact work coming together. If you look at the center of the graphic is an individual, and that is acknowledging that all of this work, our nonprofit partnerships, grant making, all of that is in service to individuals, even though we understand that our immediate kind of end user is nonprofit organizations. What you see represented are concentric circles for household stability, educational success, and economic opportunity. And that is to represent and acknowledge, honestly, that individuals that are navigating poverty do so oftentimes navigating multiple systems or multiple challenges that could be working in tandem to create challenges, but certainly that no one navigates poverty in a vacuum. What you also see is housing and food insecurity at the core of our strategy or of our overall kind of vision of impact. That is because housing and food security tend to be consistently the number one reason why individuals are contacting 211, our 24/7 resource helpline. It is far and above the basis for our community impact strategy, because we understand that getting someone stably housed and secured provides the foundation for then increasing educational success and economic opportunity, ultimately working toward that community where we have disrupted inequity and are able to reliably predict equity. We do this work in a number of different ways and pull a number of levers, sometimes individually or work together to advance toward the desired outcomes that are shown here on the right side of the slide. And so I mentioned 211, our resource helpline. We provide the service to the entire state of Minnesota. Our nonprofit partnerships, which is what we are spending the majority of our time today talking about, serve as a real strong basis, not only for our service, but also a source of information. And so we are constantly listening, amplifying what we're hearing, identifying themes and sharing that out and working to educate the broader community as we also learn. Advocacy is a growing part of our work. We have invested in advocacy for some time, both in terms of coalitions and participating in coalitions. But in the last couple of years, we've shown up more directly at the Capitol on behalf of Greater Twin Cities United Way. And a number of you all have helped inform that work and helped us advance that. And we're looking forward to continuing to do that to deepen our relationships across the Capitol and other bodies of government. And we also do that through innovation. So I mentioned the promising strategies earlier in the theory of philanthropy. A lot of that lives in our innovation work. For example, our career academies work with school districts across the state, Full Lives, the work that we've done in North Minneapolis to build out a self-sustaining food system. These are all examples of where we are co-creating with community solutions and then amplifying them and working upstream on policy solutions to help advance the things that we are learning in our grant-making work. And then last but not least is business partnerships. We have significant relationships with corporations across the metro, really across the state, and we're able to leverage those both in terms of offering opportunities for volunteering, but also through securing investments from those businesses to then help fuel all of this work in service to you all and the individuals that you serve. So that is the community impact strategy in a nutshell. This is probably old hat to a number of you, but for those that are new to the process, I want to make sure that you understand that the information that will follow here for the rest of the afternoon is all in service to the North Star I mentioned before, our theory of philanthropy, and the way that we execute it is through the slide that is represented here before you now. Before I turn it over to Dr. Hawkins, I do want to just say a huge thanks to the team members, the Greater Twin Cities United Way employees that helped get us to this point. What you will hear is a lot of information, but also represents a ton of thoughtful planning, diligent listening, and really careful consideration of ways to make this process as streamlined and painless as possible for would-be applicants. So I want to just acknowledge their hard work and leadership and say thank you publicly, as well as thank the advisory group that helped us to refine our RFP. Their insight and guidance was incredibly helpful. And with that, I want to add a very special thank you to Dr. Beverly Hawkins, who you'll hear from in a second. I am honored to have had her influence in this work as someone who is a longstanding leader, both in the nonprofit sector. You can see evidence of her work all along University Avenue, but also in the public sector prior to leading Model Cities. She has retired and fortunately for us has more time on her hands and offered a considerable amount of guidance. And so want to thank you, Dr. Hawkins, for that and turn it over for your remarks.
Thank you so much, Acooa. Let me just say a little bit about me before I get started. I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, and it was a Black environment, and we knew each other very well. We were accustomed to working together and collaborating. I did not know I was living in a matriarchal society until I went to Kansas State University. And it was basically at that point, learning how we were being characterized, that I really became very interested and actually involved in working in community. I know what it's like to have lived in poverty. I know what it's like to be set in certain boxes, in small boxes, and to be basically ignored as a community. I got involved as a very young person, involved in working in community. And actually, I spent 40 plus years working in the nonprofit sector. 34 of those years were at Model Cities, which is a United Way funded grantee. So I'm saying all that to say that as when I got the notice about this opportunity to serve on this advisory group, I thought I definitely wanted to get involved in that. I remember having filled out grant applications with the United Way. We, I guess, 30 some years of filling out grant applications to the United Way. I remember getting ready for site visits and all the stress that came with that. And so when I was selected, I was really very pleased with that. I thought I could bring some skills to it and I could bring a voice from the community. So it wasn't just me though. I want to make sure that the other people who served on that advisory group, that they are recognized as well. Alicia, Joe, Mason, Shayla, we, Sharon, we all were working very hard to provide community input. We also had Eric and Jocelyn who facilitated those sessions along with Steve, the staff person. So we were very frank, you need to know that. And those who know me know that I tend to be frank. We were very clear. We didn't want a RFP to go out that was confusing. We figured if the language wasn't simple and understandable, the answers would come back wrong. We did not want grantees to have a dictionary and a thesaurus next to them as they're getting those applications prepared. So we were very involved in everything that had to do with the RFP and other key documents as well. So the group of us, we met for 5+ months, and we were, everything that came our way, we were clearly concerned about and focused on racial equity. We were very involved as far as grantees. I wasn't the only previous grantee. There were other people on the group that were grantees as well. So we knew, we came in with an understanding of the grantee side of this, which we could then present to the United Way and the facilitators. And I want you to know that our suggestions and our input are embodied within that RFP. So it wasn't a waste of time. It really was an effort that now we are also glad to see. We wanted to make sure that community solutions were being given an opportunity to address community problems. So what I would say to you is, having been where you are for a very long time, that I think you already know what strategies are effective from a community standpoint. You already know how to advance racial equity. And you already understand that sometimes the collaborations and the coalitions and the solutions may be off the mainstream, but you already know that they work. So I would say this is your time to apply those solutions that you know about that are effective. This is your time to include in those collaborations those groups that you know are required and needed in order to bring about substantive change in the communities that you're serving. I definitely encourage you to be innovative in that. Don't feel like you have to do the same old 7 and 6, but instead to be very creative. So I've been where you are. I wish you the best. And I will turn it over to Megan.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Beverly. I'm Megan O'Mara. I am the Senior Project Manager at Greater Twin Cities United Way. Beverly, I feel like we could wrap the training up with that advice you just gave everyone. I want to thank you again, Dr. Hawkins, for working with us through the last 5 months to create this RFP. You really made us all better, and we all thank you. So I am going to walk us through what you need to know about this RFP, the application, and the process. Next slide, Isabella, please. So the Community Investments RFP, as Acooa and Ann both alluded to, is a key strategy in our grant making work, and it's really designed to support organizations that are advancing racial equity through direct services, services that are aligned with United Way's long-term outcomes in the 5 portfolio areas that we work in. And those portfolio areas are early childhood education, career and future readiness, housing, food security, and economic opportunity. And just to give a little bit of sort of a high-level overview of the key pieces that you need to know about this RFP. First, this is a funding opportunity that we run every 3 years. So we are just wrapping up the cycle that started back in 2019 that will end next summer. Grants that come out of this RFP are general operating grants, but we hold our grantees accountable, or they're asked to report on portfolio or program level outcomes. So the money's super flexible, but we are looking at outcomes that are tied to programs and services. We commit to 3 years of funding, but grant awards are annual. And it's important to understand this distinction because as the second and the third year renewals in that cycle happen, they are based on United Way funding availability. And so we do all we can to keep grant awards whole, but everyone should just know that from year to year, it is possible that your grant amount could fluctuate, and it's even possible that it may not be renewed 1 year since it is based on funding. In terms of the number of grants we expect to make or the grant size, we don't know yet. The total pool of funds we'll have at this point. Fundraising is still happening, and those numbers will be shored up closer to or in the beginning of 2022. But I can tell you that the minimum grant award will be $50,000 a year. And then I can share that last cycle, probably about 70% or more of our grants were between $50,000 and $150,000 a year. So if you're looking for an estimate, that's probably a pretty decent one to go off of. We have a strong commitment to racial equity at United Way, and this RFP is no different. And that should be evident in our funding priorities that I'll speak to in a moment, and as well as in how we make our grant decisions. And then finally, we fund in the 9-county area. That is really the United Way service area. And we intend and we will fund organizations or services in all 9 counties. And so if you are an outer county organization, if you're working especially in Chisago or Asante, Carver, those counties, we really encourage you to apply. We know the nonprofit infrastructure looks different there, and really welcome applications from those counties. And then I also want to share that in this RFP, we are accepting applications from single organizations or from partnerships, and we really do welcome both. Partnerships can be those that have existed for a long time, or they can be brand new. Both are great. And there's lots more information that I'll share later and on our website about some of the details there. And I don't know how many here on the call are new to United Way, or this is the first time that you've applied for an RFP with us. But I just want to say welcome if you are new. We'd love to have new organizations apply. We love seeing you on the call. So glad that you're here. Next slide, please, Isabella. Okay, so I'm going to shift a little into organizational eligibility. So if you've had a chance to look at the RFP guidelines, you would have seen this sort of front and center, but these are really the main things that your organization has to have in place in order to apply. So these are required criteria. If your organization does not meet all of these criteria, please don't apply. Your application will not be scored. So that's sort of the disclaimer there. So first off, you must be a 501c3 organization or have a fiscal sponsor who's a 501c3. You must be providing direct services to individuals. That does not mean that's all your organization has to do. You can do lots of different things, but this RFP is really about direct services for individuals. So that's really the piece of work that you would be talking about in this RFP primarily. 50% or more of the people your organization serves with direct services needs to be at 200% of federal poverty guidelines or below when they enter your program. That's a bit of a mouthful, but I'll just say it again. More than half of the people that your organization serves with direct services needs to be at program entry at 200% or below of the federal poverty guidelines. And we have information on what those sort of levels are if you need them on our website. And that's just one of the core pieces of United Way's, just sort of the way that we work. That's sort of the population that one of the core populations we're focused on. We also need to see at least 50% of people that you serve need to be living in the 9-county area. So for example, if you work statewide, at least half of those that you serve with direct services need to be within the 9-county area. Your organization needs to be in operation for at least 2 years. So even if you're using a fiscal sponsor, we still need at least 2 years of operation for your organization. And then similarly, your org needs a minimum budget of $250,000 annually. Even if you're using a fiscal sponsor, $250,000 is the minimum budget. And then if you are an organization who does an audit, like if you're at an audit level, the audit would need to be clean or show no going concerns would be the other way to say that. So if you do not meet all of these criteria, but you still feel like you're a good fit for the RFP and you want to apply, and something to consider would be to apply as a partnership. So when we look at partnership applications, we ask one of the organizations in the partnership to be the lead org, and they're the ones that sort of fills out the application. We look at their financials, we look at their 501c3 status, et cetera. The partnership still has to meet some of these criteria, but there's more sort of burden on that lead organization. So we're happy to talk more about that if your organization is considering, we want to apply, we don't meet everything. We can talk more about partnership opportunities. So let's turn to the funding priorities. So different from the eligibility criteria, these are criteria or really priorities that are required or that are not required, but really are what's going to matter the most when we think about who's going to score highest in this RFP and ultimately be most competitive or more competitive. So as I've said, racial equity is really centered all throughout this RFP. It's a priority sort of across the board. If you look at sort of any part of the guidelines, race and ethnicity are the biggest predictors of inequity in our region. And the goal of this funding is really to improve racial equity outcomes. And to that end, we are really prioritizing organizations that are led by and serve a majority of Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and or people of color in this RFP. And the rationale behind that is, as I'm sure many of you know, evidence and history show that organizations led by and for people of color, are more likely to have better outcomes for those they serve. Beverly, Dr. Hawkins said it so well with community solutions to community problems. These organizations are also really historically under-resourced, even though they often hold the solutions. So part of our role as funders is to shift resources to organizations that can have the strongest impact. And this is one of the ways that we have chosen to do this. Next, organizations that are strongly connected and responsive to their communities, however they define them. And those with a history and mission explicitly focused on communities of color will be a priority in the RFP as well.
I think you want to change the slides. They're not moving with you.
Yeah, I'm not seeing them moving either. I don't know if they're frozen or not. Isabella, can you go forward? I'm going to keep going, guys, and it might be a tech issue here. Well, hopefully they'll catch up. Next up, impact and past results matter a lot as well. So looking for applications that really can show impact and are working to continuously improve. So organizations that are using information, whether that's data or learnings from their community or whatever that looks like, to make improvements to their programs and get better. And then finally, we're looking for organizations that have a clear vision for future success toward racial equity and an idea of how they will get there. And so, this is really a place for organizations to sort of dream big and express what they want to see happen over, the next 3 to 5 years. What is your future vision and what are some actionable outcomes? There'll be good space in the application to speak to that. And that's something that we'll be looking for and scoring. So while these are our funding priorities, I want to be clear that, we don't expect all organizations we fund to meet all priority criteria. I think a lot will depend on how many applications we receive, the types of organizations that apply. I will say, I think all organizations we fund will have a commitment to racial equity and sort of action to back that up. But again, this is not like the eligibility checklist where, you can't apply if you're not able to say yes to each of these bullets. To United Way, the United Way portfolio areas and the long-term outcomes. So I mentioned these before, but United Way works really in 5 main areas, programmatic areas, and has long-term outcomes affixed to each of those that we are striving for change in our community. These outcomes are arrived at in partnership with our community. They're community level outcomes, and we look to other nonprofits, to advocacy groups, to government who are working in these similar areas to really craft these outcomes. But again, as I said, the portfolio areas or the work that we're sort of looking to support was going to fall within one of these 5 areas: early childhood education, career and future readiness, housing, food security, and economic opportunity. And applicants will need to align and work in at least one of these portfolio areas. At the end of this presentation, you're gonna have the opportunity to join a breakout room with a United Way staffer to talk more in depth of each of these long-term outcomes. So there'll be lots of time at the end to ask more questions and sort of get into the weeds and what each of these means. But as I said, each applicant is going to need to select at least one portfolio area, up to all 5. Applying in more than one areas are absolutely welcome. I think what I would say is, apply where you see yourself. So when you look at the RFP guidelines, and if you meet the criteria and it feels like your work aligns, please apply. There's really no downside to it. We expect to see and fund both applications that are just coming in with one portfolio and those that are coming in with multiple portfolio applications. And it's hard to say now, how many we'll see of each. But like I said, there's really no downside if you see yourself in a portfolio area to apply in it. I'm going to move us ahead into talking a little bit about the learning approach that we take at United Way and what's going to be required of you all as applicants, and then as if you're funded as grantees when it comes to reporting on outcomes and data and things like that. So we are a learning organization, and understanding the impact and movement toward those long-term outcomes that we've set out is really critical to our vision and the success of our community. So in the application itself, we're asking for pretty minimal data, or fairly minimal data from you all. You will be asked to provide the total number of people served by your organization in a given year through direct services. That's sort of the one place where we're looking for data. And we're going to ask you to break that out by race and ethnicity, income, and county. So that's you're going to see a big table in the application, and that's really the only place where you're going to have to sort of get out, look at the numbers and enter those in. Each portfolio area, those that I spoke of before, is going to have a set of required outcome measures. Most have 2 or 3, some have a few more. And you will be asked in the application if your organization would be able to report on these outcome measures annually. So it's more of instead of asking you sort of how many people did you serve by each outcome measure, what we're instead asking is, will you be able to provide us this data on an annual basis if you're funded? And then the big thing here, and this is new for us, is we will ask if you can provide it broken out by race, ethnicity, income, and county. So again, if you're funded, this is part of what you would be required to report on in sort of the annual reporting cycle. So this is a new way for us to collect this data. We fully know that not all organizations are set up to cut their data in sort of those different permutations. And so we do expect to see different levels of capacity in applications of how orgs are set up to do this. So I would say just be honest in your application about where your org is in terms of data collection and reporting. This won't be sort of like a yes, no decision. If you can do it, you're good. If you can't, you're out. But we hope it will start a conversation with us just to better understand where you are in terms of data collection and reporting, and then help us sort of figure out if we have resources that may be able to support you if you're funded in reporting data. Also new this grant cycle is we are going to be working with organizations that are funded to develop 1 or 2 of their own outcome measures to report on. So when you think about the measures, the outcomes, the measures of success that really matter to you as an organization, that's sort of what we want to be getting at, and we will include those in sort of what you report on to us. And so again, we're not asking you to come to the application with those all baked out. There's some questions in the application that will sort of, sort of start that conversation or kind of get you thinking about what those might look like. But again, that'll be a conversation that will continue if you're funded and with our impact strategy staff, and nothing will really be settled on until near the grant, the date of the beginning of the grant. And then finally, just to give you an idea of what to expect in terms of reporting if you're funded, we run annual reports with our grantees in this portfolio. So the reports have both outcomes data and narrative questions. We sort of create the reports, we train grantees and how to fill them out. We provide a lot of support. So that's what you can expect in terms of sort of the paperwork, like completing a report. We also, really enjoy strong relationships with our grantees. We learn so much from them. We partner with them in a lot of ways beyond just this opportunity. And so you can expect probably 2 or 3 visits from us a year. And again, the focus here is just, getting to know you, relationship building, learning and understanding sort of what's going on with you. We come, set up to help support you in ways that we're able. And, overall sort of form, create a strong sort of grantee funder relationship. All right, looks like the slides are back. Apologies, everyone. Isabella, next slide, please. Yay. All right, so let's talk process. So the application is now open, open this morning at 9 a.m. It will remain open for 5 weeks, and all applications will need to be submitted using our online application by 4 p.m. on October 14th. Once all the applications are in, they will be read and scored by a team of reviewers. So each application has a team of 3 reviewers, reads and scores it. Those scores are averaged. And the reviewer pool is made up of both United Way staff. So the community impact staff, we all lead a team or so, or lead 1 to 3 teams. And then the community reviewers, of which there's probably around 50 people, are made up. We have a really amazing pool this year, made up of those with lived experience in the areas where we work, professional experience in the areas that we work, and as well as some of our highly engaged donors. So I guess know that your application will be read by at least 3 people from a variety of backgrounds, all relevant to the work that you're doing. And that those scores will sort of be taken together and averaged to create 1 score. So once all the applications have been scored, the highest scoring applications are invited to the next step of the process, which is a site visit. So at this point, this will probably be mid-December, you will receive an email from us, and it's either going to let you know that you've been invited to a site visit or that your application is no longer being considered and won't be funded. For those that learn in December that they won't be funded, you'll have the option to receive feedback on your application from one of us. So we can talk to you about, sort of the sort of pros and cons or opportunities for improvement in terms of the application, and give you a better sense of just why it wasn't funded. For those that are doing a site visit at this point, who go to site visit, this is where we'll do the full sort of financial, we'll look at all your financials and do an assessment, do our financial assessment there. So you may have some follow-up questions from us around financials at this time. And then applicants will be notified of the final funding decision in May of 2022. So we'll have a clear sense of just when in May as we get closer, but for now I can say May is when we'll hear. Next slide, please. So the reviewers are scoring applications based on an evaluation rubric that looks like this. It's much more detailed than this, but this is sort of the high level, where each question in the application is worth a certain number of points. So you can see here about half of the application score is around leadership representation. So who leads the organization, who the organization is for, who it's supporting, and then also how the organization engage and responds to its community. So you'll recognize that from when I spoke about our funding priorities a few minutes ago. And then really the other half of the score will be around the program approach and impact. And I want to make a note that will hopefully be clear as you look at the application, that this RFP and the application is much more focused on the how programs and services are delivered than the what. So I think just that might be helpful to think with that frame when you're answering questions. We're really interested in sort of how are you delivering programs and services, and how are they making a difference or having an impact on those that you're supporting. Next slide, Isabella. A few practical tips as you're getting ready to apply. So first, if you are new to United Way, if you've not applied using our online system ever or for a while, you need to get set up with essentially access before you can get to that application. And so my colleague Cece is going to show you how to do that in a minute, but just even if you're not for sure if you're going to apply for the application, just get that online portal set up as soon as possible. Even if you're not sure, it saves a lot of headache in the end. As I talked about at the beginning, when you start the application, you're going to see those eligibility criteria show up. That's the first thing you're going to see. You have to pass that screening to get to the rest of the application. So if you can't check all those boxes and say, yes, I meet these criteria, it's not going to let you get to the rest of the application. All the narrative questions have word counts listed in the application. These are suggested word counts. They're not required, but concise is really great. Bullets are fine. Bullets are great. We are not scoring based on how sort of beautifully a narrative is written or how well something is sort of crafted. We're really, we know that organizations have different levels of capacity and different teams of grant writers and different access to grant writers. And so we're really just trying to get the information. So we're less about sort of how well it's written and more about answering the question to the best of your ability. And then these last two are very important. Our online system does not autosave. So I know every other sort of online system autosaves and we get really used to it, but it has been known to disconnect from the internet or something like that and wipe out people's applications. So there's two things to counteract that. So first, we have Word versions, like Word document versions of the application on our website. And so I really encourage you to start there. It's the full application. Download that, fill it out, get all your stuff in there, and then you can copy and paste into the online system. And then when you're working in the online system, just be sure you're saving as often as possible. There are save buttons everywhere. Just keep hitting those save buttons, and you should be just fine. I have just a few more minutes, and I'm going to turn to Cece here. I know we're running a little behind. I just want to give a sense of, what we expect to see in terms of volume of applications and competitiveness and things like that. So we will see a lot of applications. I think there's probably almost 200 people in this info session, and I think that speaks for itself in terms of interest. The last round of this RFP 3 years ago, we had 170 applications, and I do think we may see more this time. We know how great the need is for these funds. It's hard to say at this point how many applications will actually be funded. That, of course, depends on how many we get and how well they're aligned with our priorities, the amount of funds that we have available. But I will say last round, probably about 55% of applicants received grants compared to the number of applications we received. If you do receive a site visit, so if you make it to that step, It does increase your chances of being funded, but it does not guarantee that you'll be funded. I know some funders, the site visit is really like a final sort of check step and nearly everyone is funded. That's not sort of how our site visit works in our process. We usually fund about 80% of those that receive a site visit. So just know that it's not sort of a done deal if you receive a site visit. And finally, as I said, our fundraisers are working fast and furiously to raise as many funds as we can for the first year of this RFP in 2022. And we will have a better sense of those funds in Q1 of next year. Next slide, please. So I've talked about a lot of these dates. So the only ones I will point out on this timeline is, as I said, mid-December is when you're going to hear sort of the first round decisions, either site visit or your application is no longer being considered. The site visits will be held in January and February. There'll be lots more communication and information closer to that time. They are usually about an hour, and we prep you well. There's a set of questions, things like that. And then in May is when we'll have final decisions, and then the new grant period begins in July. Whew, so that's a lot from me. I'm going to take a break. Turn it over to my colleague Cece Klueh, who's going to talk about important technical aspects of filling out your application.
Thanks, Megan. I'm going to share my screen over here. So hi, everyone. My name is Cece Klueh. I am the manager of our web systems here at Greater Twin Cities United Way. So part of that is I support the technical side of the RFP application on our grants portal. And that part of that is questions about the application itself, or getting a login, or if you have any issues with that login or what you're seeing when you log into the site. So today I'm going to walk through how to create a new application, how to save it, come back in and visit it again when you need to later, and then just reiterating some of those best practices that Megan mentioned earlier. So I'm going to show you how to log in from the funding opportunities page. I know that this is the site that's getting sent out for the most part. And there are a lot of really useful links on this page. So the first thing I want to talk about around the application itself is if you do not have an account, grants portal account, there is a link here to register. I did see someone made a note, I don't know if it was answered, but if you are new, you don't have a grants portal account, please request a brand new one underneath your own name. You don't need to use an account from someone who you've been using for the last 5 years and they're no longer with the organization. You can request a new account for you. And actually that's preferred because it lets us know who made the edits at different times, and we can actually track like who is in the system and last saved the document if that is needed. So you can click here to register, and all we're requesting is your first name, last name, the organization, and the address, and we'll get you set up with an account in 1 to 2 business days. Faster right now because we're working on getting everybody ready to go at the beginning. Once you have an account, you can click this begin your application button. This will take you to our grants portal login page. So I mentioned earlier, if you already have an account, you don't need to request a new one, but maybe you've forgotten your password. It's been a little while since you've logged in to the site. There is this forgot username password button here. Your username is your work email address or whatever email address you sent us to create an account, so you can get your new password there. So just right away. Otherwise, you can go ahead and log in this username section here. So I'm going to log into this account here. So fill in username and password and click login. And then you'll notice that there is a technical support. If you're having any issues with your login, you are able to either reach out to the RFP inbox, or you can call our support team as well. And that goes directly to our help desk. So that's for technical questions only. So now I've logged into my account and I've come to the Community Investments RFP application page. There's a big button here to start a new RFP application. If you need to go back to that page we were just in, there is a link to it as well, the funding opportunities. This is a great one to have ready to go back to, so you can check out RFP guidelines as needed throughout the application. So I'm going to click the Start a New Application button. And you'll first be taken to a page with some instructions. And these instructions will always stay up here at the top. And then you have the first section, which is the eligibility section that Megan mentioned. In order to continue with the rest of the application, you must be able to check all of these boxes so that this continue button down here becomes live. So once all of these boxes are checked, you can click continue to come to your begin a new application page. So there are 3 areas that are required before the button to create a new application appears. So the first is your org legal name, organization. Oh my gosh, there we go. Your legal name, and then are you applying as a single organization, as a partnership? This will actually determine sort of, there's a few things that are slightly different wording and whatnot on the single org application or the partnership. So this actually drives what your application will look like. And then your portfolio areas, and you may select as many as you need to apply. I think we mentioned earlier that there's one application, and then based on what portfolios areas you've checked, those sections will be included in the one application for you. So I'm going to pick 3 portfolio areas, and now you'll notice that that create application button has appeared. So I'm going to click that. And this actually saves my application for the first time and then shows me the rest of the application. So you'll notice those instructions are still up here at the top, and the 3 things that I filled in now are saved here. If for any reason you need to change your portfolio areas or one of these, the single to partnership or the name, please reach out to the RFP inbox. We'll need to do that for you on our end. So now I've saved my application for the first time. I can come in and add a few things here. And I'm going to go to my first save point. You'll notice there are plenty of save sections throughout the entire application. Please use these liberally. You can use them all the time. As Megan mentioned, there is no auto save, so please click the save button. You'll know that your application has been saved successfully if you get to this screen, and then you can just click return to application to get back there. I'm just going to close the document now, and it always makes sure that you've saved before you close. I'm going to click yes. And I just want to show you how to return to a saved application. So I've started my application. I don't ever need to click this start a new RFP application button again. I can come back here when I'm ready to work on it some more. And I'll see in this RFP applications section, all of my open applications. And to get back into it, you just click directly on the name, which is going to be your org legal name, and then the date you started the application. And now I've clicked back in, and you'll see there's what I've started, and I can come in and add more to it. I wanted to note here that any person or any grant portal accounts that are connected to the same organization, you will all be able to see the same draft application. And that also means that you're able to edit it. I would highly suggest not editing them at the same time. We don't have like dual saving, so it's really possible for you to save over each other's work. However, if you're ready to pass it along to someone else to add their section in, you can shoot them an email and say you can log in. And so it's possible for more than one person to work on this and have more than one login to get to the same application. Just try not to work on it at the same time. And then last, when you're ready to submit your application, there is a checkbox here and one at the bottom that says ready to submit. Check that box. Double check all of your work, because you will not be able to come in and edit anything after you click submit unless you reach out to us, and then we can help. Click the submit button. And it will take you back to the home page. And I just wanted to point out that underneath application status, before this said draft, because it was in draft mode, if you are concerned, you're not sure if it has submitted properly, you do not receive an email or anything like that. Well, you actually probably will, but not an auto email. So you can check this application status, and if it says submitted, it's submitted. correctly. So best practices, always remember to save, work out of the Word document first, just in case, so that you don't lose anything. And then don't work on it at the exact same time as somebody else who within your same organization, because you could potentially save over each other's work, but feel free to request multiple logins if you need them. And if you have any technical issues, you can reach out to our support team, which you see on that login page, or to the RFP inbox, and they'll get you to the right person.
So we are here for you throughout this application. We are standing by to support you in whatever way you need, answer your questions, have conversations about what you're thinking in terms of applying. We're here for it. So there's a lot of ways to get in touch with us. The first and probably easiest, email rfp@gtcuw.org. That goes to our central inbox. One of our colleagues is manning that. We'll get it to the right place and we'll get back to you quickly, within 1 to 2 business days. Usually it's quicker than that. You can also schedule directly with one of our United Way program officers. We have a way actually that you can book right onto their calendar. And you can find all that information on our RFP website, which is listed here. And then finally, take a look at our frequently asked questions. We're updating that weekly, and it's actually quite comprehensive and a good place to start if you have just any questions at all around the RFP. And then if you are new to United Way, again, we're so glad you're here. We came up with just a quick one-pager around what it means to be a United Way partner that just gives a little more information than I provided today around some of the benefits of being a funded partner of United Way. So with that, we are almost to 2:30, and I can see there's lots of activity in the chat that's already been answered, but let me open it for general questions for a bit, and then we're going to move into breakout rooms where you'll have a chance, if you would like, to speak sort of or talk more specifically to a program officer around a specific portfolio area. So Karen, I'm going to ask you maybe to come off mute and either answer directly questions that you're seeing in the chat or throw them to me. And for everyone on the call, drop your questions in the chat or feel free to come off mute and ask.
Megan, I've been able to tackle a lot of the questions in the chat. But there have been some great technical questions in there, some portfolio specific questions. I know Anne has been monitoring the chat as well. So, Anne, I don't know if there are any unanswered questions that you think might be good for the whole group to hear.
And of course, everyone can go into the chat and read some of those questions. All right, I'm mindful of time and I want to be sure we have
Megan?
time. Oh, yep.
There's a couple questions that have just come in. Apologize, I was on mute there. Can you define direct service to individuals?
I would define that as programs or services that are being that are going directly to individuals. I should probably get a better written definition there. But if your organization is providing any sort of services or any sort of service that is directly impacting an individual, I would call that a direct service. If you are unsure of if your services fit, just reach out and we can give you a good read on that. I'll say what is not in direct services. The reason we sort of say direct services, things like advocacy, things like what I'd call like systems change work. So if you're working on, I don't know, different administrative changes or things like that, that we would not, well, there could be certainly an impact on individuals. That's like why we're doing it, but it's not a direct service to an individual.
Megan, for the eligibility requirement regarding 50% people meeting the poverty guideline, Do applicants need to attest to that or provide evidence of it in any way?
Yep. So for that, we're asking you to attest to it, and then you're also going to fill out essentially the demographics for the total number of people your organization serves through direct services. And we're going to ask you to split that out by income. So, that also is just your numbers, but, we trust that organizations are giving us giving us sort of the right data from their organization. So it's more than just checking a box. We are looking at your demographic information in the application.
Megan, there's a question about the grant length. Could you speak again to the grant length? And then also the second part of the question is around requesting an amount per year or in totality.
Yep. So the community investments RFP is a 3-year funding cycle. So we commit, if you're funded here, we are committing to funding for 3 years. However, your grant agreement will be 1 year at a time. So if you're funded, you're going to get a grant agreement that goes from July 1, 2022 to 2023 for X amount of dollars. And then that grant will be renewed for the second year and be renewed for the 3rd year to end the 3-year cycle. And then we do not ask for, you do not have to request an amount. It's general operating funding, and funding is determined based on a number of factors that sort of align with the priorities that we've talked about before. And like I said, minimum of $50,000 a year. Most grants are between $50,000 and $150,000 a year.
Great, thanks. There's a question specific to economic opportunity. In the economic opportunity portfolio, the goal is adults enter the workforce.
Yeah, I see it.
I guess the question is, what age group does adults refer to?
It would be 18 or over. And Eva, will you just confirm that quick? Come up mute and confirm that.
Yep, that's correct. 18 and over.
Thank you.
Let's focus.